Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Good morning, Rabbi. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Couldn't be better, thank you, Raphael, and such a great pleasure to finally meet you on the air.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And we know one of the old sayings is time is money, right? And that's one of the things that we always consider when we do anything. I mean, I know I do, and I believe you do the same.
Very much so, of course. In fact, it's the only commodity of which there is a shortage. Mm-hmm. You know, whenever I speak to people about increasing their revenue, the challenge is to help them understand that money is infinitely available.
It is,
but the limitation is time, and correct usage of that time is a crucial first step.
And so there's abundance, and a lot of people don't understand that fully when there is abundance.
Abundance is the natural consequence of a certain mindset. I don't know if you are a religious man or if your listeners are religious or not. And it absolutely doesn't matter, in the same way that it doesn't matter whether you know the laws of physics, but gravity is still going to apply.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
It has nothing to do with that. You know, you may know the rules of looking after tools, and you may not. But if you don't keep that chisel sharp, it's not going to do its job. I mean, it's straightforward. So, that having been said, there are two incompatible, conflicting mindsets in the world. One of them is a mindset of shortage and limitation, and the other is a mindset of abundance. And so, to give you an example, fax machines started becoming popular in the early 1980s, and all of a sudden, this miracle occurred that I could send a contract to somebody in Hong Kong in 90 seconds, as long as it took for the machine to scan my contract, and they could sign it and fax it back to me, and all of that could be done through this miracle of fax machines. Everybody wanted a fax machine. And at the time, one of the popular social scientists made a simple calculation, and he said, look, there's about 300 million people in America, and there's double that in Africa, and let's not even get as far as India and China. And it's very simple. All of a sudden, everybody's going to want two phone lines. Now, a phone line used to be what they called a twisted pair, a two-conductor copper wire. And so I read this with interest because I had two phone lines plus a fax line. So I had three twisted pair copper wires coming to my house. And he said, look, if all of these people want the same thing as Rabbi Daniel Lapin, basically, there isn't enough copper in the world if you examine all the copper reserves. And therefore we need to start asking people to voluntarily limit how many lines they will use. So instead of getting a separate line for your fax machine, just use a switch to switch from phone use to fax use. Well, that's all very well, excepting I like talking on the phone while my fax machine is working.
Right.
And so I thought this is really interesting. And it reminded me of an early stage in American history where during the early American period, America was lit by whale oil. The proof of that is the financial wealth that was generated in Massachusetts and other ports of New England, where the whaling ships would come in, and the ships would go out for a year or more sometimes and kill whales and render their carcasses into the blubber into oil. And this would be shipped around the then early United States. And that was how, anyway, people realized we're running out of whales, being slaughtered at a faster rate than they're reproducing. And so they decided to try and pass a law in America that nobody is allowed to have lanterns running after 10 p.m. at night in an attempt to save the whale. I thought, well, that's really similar to what I'm hearing in 1980 about fax machines. We better voluntarily limit our use. That is a mindset of shortage and limit. How did the whale oil problem play out? Well, exactly at the same time this was going on, there was a railway conductor in Titusville, Pennsylvania, who found a gooey black substance coming out of the ground in some of his property. And he realized this was oil. Titusville, Pennsylvania. And within less than 10 years, the Standard Oil Company had purchased a lot of the sources of this oil in Pennsylvania and Texas, and America stopped using whale oil. Within very little time, whale oil was no longer an issue because America was being lit by paraffin made of oil, of which there was no shortage. That's abundance.
That is abundance. When you consider, go ahead.
I was just going to say that very quickly, communication moved into the cell phone. All of Africa jumped across the copper phase. People never used phones running on copper wire in Africa. Hundreds of millions of people use cell technology, and wire and information is carried under the oceans, not on copper, but on glass. And glass is made of sand. And when I last flew over the Sahara Desert, I noted that we're not running out of sand anytime soon.
Not at all. You know, one of the things, one of the things that's fascinating about listening to what you're saying is that you study history in order to assess your current times, to assess the future. And that comes from you also studying the Torah, which correct. Is, and you asked me if I'm a religious man. I've struggled with religion because it was not as prevalent in my household growing up as it was in yours. So, for example, you wrote this amazing book, which I thank you so much for getting me a copy of it and signing it for me. The 10 Commandments for making money. And most people read the Bible or read the Torah, or I even have the Quran here that someone gave me. We don't necessarily read it to know how to make money, but it's in there. And you've pointed it out really crystal clear in your book on how it makes so much sense that we have to tie one to the other. But so many people don't see it that way. They see it as religious, nonsense and so forth.
I really don't care whether people are religious or not. I mean, right. Please yourself. It's a free country. In the same way that I really don't care if you go to the gym and work out, or if you stay home and watch television and eat cookies. I don't have a horse in that race. I really couldn't care. I mean,
Right.
I'd like it if you were healthy, but what I do believe in my primary work of helping people increase their revenue, helping people make more money, there it is incredibly important to have a spiritual awareness, because so much of what we do financially and economically has no rational economic basis. To give you an example, take clothing. Do you know how many articles of clothing I'm wearing?
About a bunch.
A bunch. I got a jacket, I got a tie, I got a shirt, and if
Probably
that's
an
not enough,
undershirt.
I got cufflinks here. See
Yes.
that? And you know how long it takes to get dressed in the morning? A bunch of time. It takes me a good 20 seconds to get my cufflinks on. It's 20 seconds I could use for something else. Here's the best article of clothing, and I use it when I work on my boat. Do you know what it is? I'm sure you've seen it now. I wouldn't be at all surprised if you've worn one as well. It's a set of mechanics overalls. You know how long it takes me to put it on? I'm fully clothed, ankles to wrists to neck, in about 20 seconds. You step into the legs, you put your arms into the arms, then there's a big diagonal brass zip that goes from my left knee to my right chest, and zip it up, and I'm dressed and it's done. Why don't we all wear that? By the way, it costs $30. My cufflinks cost more than $30.
Right.
So it's so rational. Why aren't we all wearing mechanics overalls? It's crazy. It makes so much sense financially and in every other. And that, Raphael, is because we are not animals. We are spiritual creatures.
We are.
And when it comes to clothing and our appearance, and a very spiritual concept called our dignity, efficiency and rationalism isn't the goal. We don't dress in order to be efficient and rational.
Right.
We dress to express our inner soul to the outside world. Now, if you're in business, you need to know that. If you're hoping to make money, you need a deep understanding of the full range of motivations of human beings. We're not motivated just by efficiency. If that were true, people that sold the lowest priced object would always succeed and do best. But no, there's a market for Ferraris. There's a market for BMWs. There's also a market for Hyundais and Kias, because human beings are spiritual, and we oh my good, look at that. What a lovely message from Michael Bank. Read your book many years ago, Rabbi. Great to see you and my friend Raphael together. Well, Michael, Raphael, teacher Raphael, I hope you don't mind me mentioning my new book, which is called The Holistic You. It's just hit Amazon. And so, Michael, take a look at that. Here's the subtitle: Integrating Your Family, Finances, Faith, Friendships, and Fitness. All of those 5 things. And it's so important. You know, we all understand how critical it is to see our bodies as a system. And so, you know, if you're training somebody in martial arts, you're not going to say to him, listen, this year we're going to focus on your arms so that you can punch. We'll worry about legs next year. You know, so don't worry about what happens to your legs. Just do arm exercises and go to the gym and work out your biceps, and don't worry about anything else. You'd never dream of saying anything like that, because the body works as an entire system. And what we don't always realize is that our lives work as an entire system, the holistic you. And learning how to integrate these 5 critical areas of our lives is as important as learning to integrate our bodies and learning that we've got to make our cardio system work, and our breathing, and our lungs and our muscles. Everything has to work. Our livers and our hearts, everything has to work properly all the time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so it is. People sometimes say, well, for the next few years, I'm going to focus on my finances. I can't tell you how many young women I've counseled who reach the late 30s and they say, I've got a great job, I've got a 401k, I've got a retirement plan, I've made a lot of money, but I'm miserable because all I want to do was be a wife and a mother and have a family. And I always thought I'd be able to. You can't fail to see that it's a simultaneous system. Everything needs to be worked on at the same time.
Yeah, beautiful. I do have a question that has been burning inside of me since I started reading your book, and it may bring some concern for you, very much so, because I want to get into who you are as a person, the way you grew up, who influenced you the most. And in your book, you kind of tell us, but if you can give us a deeper. So here's my question for you. What if you were not born Jewish?
Yeah.
How would your life be so different?
Well, who knows? But all my work is 90% for people who are not Jewish. Only about 10% of my audience and my market is Jewish. And
that's not what I'm questioning. I'm questioning is that as a rabbi, you guide your people in a way of the religion aspect of it, but you also go outside of that realm, and you also talk at Christian churches. You talk to people who are not religious whatsoever, but all your teachings, all your upbringing comes from your Jewish faith, if you will. So that's why that was the burning question for me. What if you were born into my family where they just prayed, they didn't really emphasize it, they didn't go into the teachings of it. I go to a church myself. I decided, I got so fed up for so long, I needed to take it into my own hands. So I read the Bible every day. I'm listening to podcasts on Bible. I go to the church. I write notes when I'm learning stuff. When I listen to you speak, I take notes. When I was reading your book, I took notes, because it all comes together, and it's fulfilling to me, but it took my own hand, my own will to find it. Meanwhile, it was gifted to you as a child. So tell me about your childhood. Where did you grow up? I know you said South Africa
I'm afraid
Germany.
I'm going to resist you here, teacher Raphael.
Go for it.
I'll tell you why.
Yes.
Because this isn't about me. I'm a very uninteresting person.
You
but
think?
What I have access to, now that is interesting, and that is worthwhile. Okay. So, like anybody else, I love talking about myself, but it's of no value to anybody. What is of value to people is the material that I teach, the resources I create, the books that my wife and I produce, and the online lessons and the online courses. Those are the things that are of value. So, I grew up on the African continent. You are right. I was raised in a religious home of the Jewish faith. But you know what? Like most teenagers, I went through my rebellion, and I had to reacquire it. It had to become mine. And so I don't know that it makes a whole lot of difference where you grow up. I don't know. It's up to you. You can seek out. Now, would I have done so? Who knows? We can speculate about that. Right. I'd like to think that I would have sought out Rabbi Daniel Lapin, no matter where I was born and where I grew up. That's what I like to think I would have done. In reality, of course, I had certain blessings, like everybody else. You grow up in certain environments with certain benefits and certain difficulties. Nobody's childhood is perfect.
Right.
I like avoiding the use of words like trauma and abuse, because one man's inconvenience is another man's traumatic abuse.
Right.
And so I don't, when somebody says I had an abusive childhood, like, what does that mean? Your parents insisted that you went to bed at 7 p.m. Is that what you're talking about? In most cases, when I speak to people, in most cases, certainly in the United States and in Europe, it's different in Africa. But even in Africa, I don't hear a lot of people talking about their horrible childhoods. It's mostly the result of affluent Americans who speak about their dreadful childhoods. And I'm not ruling out the possibility. Yes, there are some people who had tough childhoods. I know that there are people who did. But the vast majority of people are too focused on the past and not on the future. Too many people are looking for the explanations and the excuses for why they're not making a success of their lives.
Right.
So
yeah, you're 1,000% right. Everyone has an excuse, right? And when one doesn't work, they look for another one, right?
Yeah. So that's why the interesting thing is the roadmap to prosperity, the roadmap to life success, and the way the 5 areas of finance, family, friendships, fitness, and faith all interact with one another in order to bring about total life success.
So how can we go through our spiritual being and find success in a professional world? And then does success also mean financial security as well?
Financial security is a difficult term, Raphael, and I'll tell you why. It's because it means so many different things to different people.
Right.
If you think about this, if you had the financial achievements you now have, if you had them when you were 17, wouldn't you have thought you were the luckiest teenager in the world?
Oh, yeah.
But as the years go by, your requirements for financial security change, and they go up. So I don't like using that word so much, but I do like the word prosperity. That's why one of our books is "Thou Shalt Prosper." So we like that. And you might say, well, prosperity means different. Yeah, it's true. But prosperity implies constant growth. And so, yes, one of the 5 crucial underpinnings of your life is finances. And I think you would agree that for anybody who has healthy finances, got money in the bank, no debt, and this person has a terrific family, and this person has good relationships with his friends, he has a social life, he's connected with organizations and groups, and the person has a good relationship with God, and the person has physical fitness, I think you'd agree that that person does not have a lot of reason to complain in life.
Oh, yeah. And if they do, they just want attention.
Shoot them.
Yeah, they just want attention.
Yeah, for sure. So that's why finance is an absolutely indispensable leg in this 5 leg system.
Yeah. And one of the things that you just pointed out behind you is that the resources, right, to find the abundance.
Yes.
Because if you don't use this, it's going to be hard to find, because you can use your body to work, but your body's only going to give you a certain amount of results. When you use your mind, then that's where the results truly come in. right?
Well, that's the idea exactly. The idea that physical, namely my body, physical is intrinsically limited. My this lovely mug, I hope it doesn't fall on the floor, but if it does, it's history.
Right. It's replaceable.
I can go and get another one if I have money. And that also goes back to time. But ideas are different. There is no way to destroy our conversation because I think it's going to be on the internet forever. These ideas. So in other words, things that are spiritual last forever. Things that are physical are limited.
Right.
A computer will eventually die. But software doesn't. Now, it may become obsolete, but the actual arrangement of ones and zeros in a complex piece of 1 million lines of code, that can't be destroyed. And so it's really important to see that if you decide that your relationship with money is essentially physical, then you are limiting yourself.
Right.
You are surrounding yourself with a culture of shortage. But if your relationship with money is spiritual at heart, there's no limit, none at all.
Yeah. You talk about money, and I love how, I think it was the first time I saw one of your videos, and you talked about the way you see money as a certificate, right? It's not just a bill, it's a certificate of performance.
Yes.
And I love that, because in order to get any amount of money, you have to perform to get it, right? No matter what your profession is.
Right. Yes. If we're going to rule out taking a revolver into a convenience store and holding them up, if you're not going to get money, then you have to make money.
Right.
And the only way to do that is to serve other human beings. There isn't another way of doing it. And that's why I shudder with fear when a young person tells me that they want to go into public service. You know what public service is? That word public service is a euphemism. You're sometimes with a group of people, somebody gets up and says, excuse me, I'm just going to the men's room. What does that mean? Is that a room where there's beer on tap, big screen TV with a game going? Is that what I think that's what a men's room should be. No, it's because we don't like saying where I'm actually going, because we prefer a euphemism. And that's partially because we are spiritual beings. If we were just physical beings, what's the problem? Excuse me, I'm going to take a crap.
Yeah.
But we don't say that.
We try to refine ourselves.
And that's because we are not just bodies, we are also souls. And public service is a euphemism. What it means is I'm going to work for the government so I can never be fired. So I will make more money than I could ever make in the private sector. And you are going to be paying me. So I never like hearing people say they're going into public service, because it means another 10 fingers in my wallet.
Yes.
But when a young person says to me, well, my goal is to start a business and be a millionaire by the time I'm 30, I applaud. That's good news.
Yeah.
Because she's not saying she's going to take money out of my pocket. She's saying she's going to produce a goods, an item, or a service that is so irresistible, and that's going to so improve my life that I will voluntarily give her $100 in order to have the benefit of what she created. That's wonderful.
Yeah. That's
I love
enterprise,
hearing
right?
people say they have financial goals and financial aspirations, because they are making my world a better place as they go to achieve those goals.
In a lot of times in your teachings, what I found is that you talk about the importance of community relationships. I also love how you share the Jewish community in your book, and and the meaning it truly has in business and family. So the question here is, why are these two principles so important, not only in the Jewish community, but in all communities?
Well, look, it's there's a very good reason that communist or socialist tyrannies have never built successful economies. China is a separate category. I think everybody understands that China is a sort of hybrid we've never seen before. You've got the Chinese Communist Party without question, but at the same time, they have accelerated the emergence of a kind of market economy. I mean, they're millionaires in China, and there are people in China purchasing high-end automobiles and high-end jewelry. So it's a weird hybrid. But if you think of the Soviet Union, if you think of some of those communist countries, Albania and Bulgaria, and some of the terrible places under Soviet rule, or you think of Cuba, these people have never successfully built an economy, because one of the things that socialism does, in spite of paradoxically its name, see, socialism has a friendly sounding name, doesn't it? It means we're all going to be social. But the fact is, it doesn't work that way. Under a socialist regime, people are terrified of associating with each other, and the regime monitors people connecting with each other because they are fearful of an insurrection.
Yeah.
Paradoxically, capitalism has an unfriendly sound to it. But the fact is that when you walk out of a store where you don't know the store owner and he doesn't know you, but you voluntarily handed over $30 and he voluntarily handed over to you a nice sweater, he says, "Have a nice day." Does he mean it? Who cares? Diplomacy throughout the world functions on people behaving in a certain way that is not necessarily consistent with how they feel, but it's a nice way nonetheless. And so I would much rather people treat me nicely and insincerely than they treat me horribly but very sincerely. I don't care about sincerity. I care about behavior. And the free market encourages wonderful behavior for the most part. Obviously, when companies get too large and they begin to collude with government, then you get a lot like what America has with its pharmaceutical industry at the moment. And we all lived through COVID, so we know a little bit about that. But yes, connection and community is fundamental. And when it comes to people who consult me about increasing their income, making more money, enhancing their revenue, I have a number of questions to ask them, many of which would appear to have nothing to do. People have sometimes said to me, "Why do you want to know my marital status? I'm here to talk to you about making money." And you know what the answer is, Raphael?
What's that?
The answer is that men who have wives, are more socially connected than single men.
They are, for sure.
And I always ask in lectures and in auditoriums and at events I appear at, I always say, those men who are married, show me your hands. Okay, great. It's your hands. I say, now, you men, I have a question for you. Would you tell me, I want you to raise your hand if you are the one in your family who sends birthday cards, birthday gifts, Christmas cards to the family. If your wife does it, keep your hand down. But if you do it, put up your hand. Almost no hands go up.
No hands go up, of course.
Yeah. So the reason I will ask somebody who comes to me inquiring about consulting on the question of increasing revenue, I need to have a sense of your connectivity. If you're a loner living in your mother's basement all by yourself and you're not connected with people, then we got a long road ahead of us. I can help you, but you're going to have to do some major life adjustments.
Yeah. Creating connections.
Because, as I said, finance and friendship and family, as well as faith and fitness, are intimately connected with one another. And if you don't get that, And if you don't build the architecture of your life around that idea, it's not going to work.
So you're basically talking about your network is based also on your net wealth, right?
And I don't like using the word network so much. I agree with you. You're exactly right. What you just said, you're exactly right. My only problem with network is that it has a certain self-serving fakeness to it.
Oof, it
And
sure
I know
does.
that's not true to everybody. I'm not I mean, people are proud of their networks. I get it. But sometimes people go to networking events. I hate those. I never go to those. I hate them because everybody is busy eyeing the crowd. It's like guys looking at a few pretty girls at a singles event, In this case, at a networking event, everybody's looking to see who can be most useful to them. But you have to give before you can hope to receive. You've got to become a giver. Right. And so in a networking event, people are not focused enough on the idea of, let's see, who can I help? Right. They're looking at who can help me. And that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So yes, the number of people in your network is very important. But how you generate that network and how you maintain that work and how you grow that network is a function of your authenticity, not your manipulativeness.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because you're 1,000% right when it comes to that. When you go to an event, everybody wants to know is, hey, what can you do for me? And as a giver myself, right? Usually a lot of when I go to an event, people are like, what do you need? I'm like, I'm here to help you. What do you need? And people, they're a little bit like taken back because I'm the opposite of what you just said.
And that's why you're successful.
Like helping people, right? So for me, when I pray every morning, one of my prayers every morning is, Lord, please guide me in helping more of your children so that I can be a benefit to them. So
Raphael,
that's one of my prayers
you
every
and
day.
me both.
Nice.
That's exactly the wording. Yes.
Yeah. So when we consider what we do every day, I also believe that my actions lead to my tomorrows, right? So my actions today will either give me fruit for tomorrow, or I will have rotten tomatoes, or everything that I do is gonna, if I plant my seeds today, they're not gonna grow tomorrow.
Yes.
But so tomorrow I have to tend to them, just like I have to do until they actually come into full bloom. So with that being said, when we consider technology, the way technology is working today, how is technology influencing our spirituality and even our relationships? Because there is a concern, because people are looking and doing the wrong things because they want to keep up with the Joneses. They want to keep up with the people who are taking pictures of a rented car or a friend's plane or some nonsense like that. And they're not being, like you talked about, authentic. How should we be concerned, and should we look to have our own path?
Technology, like what we think of today as currently technology, has not changed in terms of quality. It's turned in change of quantity. What I mean by that is that the very first time in the middle 1700s, middle of the 18th century, the very first time somebody, James Watt, boiled water and made the steam turn a wheel, that was technology. The very first time that engineers in Germany, Mr. Daimler and Mr. Benz, and engineers in England, the very first time they started having this idea of putting a primitive internal combustion engine on a buggy so that it's driven by a motor instead of by a horse, that was technology in its day. And so today, there are some remarkable things happening technologically. Extracting oil from shale is wonderful. Now, I don't call oil a fossil fuel. I call it God-given. And one of the things that is going to become increasingly apparent as time moves on is that certain technologies are dead ends. You'll remember, Raphael, 5 years ago, do you remember everyone was talking about 10 years ago, everyone was talking about autonomous cars. We're going to be driving, we're going to be on Ubers, we're going to be on, nobody's going to be driving. Everyone's going to be driven by automatic cars. You haven't heard so much about that lately, have you?
No,
it's gone. It's finished. Because it was a wrong avenue. People are not going to do that. Not going to happen. Not in our lifetimes. Not going to happen. We want to be behind the wheel. And again, there's spiritual reasons for that.
Some people call it control.
Well, think about this question. And again, I talk about these things a lot in the Holistic You. I speak about, let me ask you this question. If you just go out on the streets and you see a lot of cars driving by, now look at all the cars that have a man and a woman in the front seat. Of those cars, and remember, we're 60 years into feminism and egalitarianism. Of those cars, would you tell me what percentage of them have the woman behind the wheel and what percentage of them have the man behind the wheel?
I would say nowadays it's like half, right? 50-50 about.
I don't
maybe
see
60.
that at all.
No?
Nope.
What do you see?
It. I see it's overwhelmingly guys driving. And I ask men, when was the last time when you were going out to your car with your wife, when was the last time she said, honey, throw me the keys, I'm driving?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Right.
And so that has a little bit to do with it as well. But my point is that, 5 years ago, do you remember everyone was talking about electric airplanes? They're going to be commuter airplanes driven by batteries.
Yeah.
I'm no prophet, but I do know a little bit about physics. And I do know that the fuel tank of an airplane gets lighter and lighter and lighter as the flight continues. And airliners arrange it so they land with pretty close to empty tanks plus a safety reserve. And one of the reasons is that the undercarriage, the landing gear, would have to be built very differently if it landed with the same weight with which it took off. And so for that and many other reasons, you haven't heard a lot about electric airplanes lately, and you're not going to.
No, probably
because
not.
the energy density of a battery is about a 50th of the energy density of a tank filled with avgas, aviation gasoline. So there's certain technologies that have sort of barked up the wrong tree. Electric cars altogether, it's not at all clear that governmental nonsense about only electric cars by 2030, the market is not going along with that. I'm not buying an electric car. Not happening for a lot of reasons, and I'm not alone. There's certain sorry.
No, I have a lot of friends of mine as well who do not believe in electric cars at all, and
I mean,
they will not buy one.
It's not happening. I see certain advantages, but it's still not happening with the present technologies. Anyway, my point is that not everything that progresses technologically automatically brings humans further along the path of evolution. That's not always true. Sometimes there are wrong avenues that are taken. When early on in the 20th century, they discovered that you could make the numerals on your watch glow in the dark by using radium-based paint. And watch factories, and America used to be a leader of watch production. Watch factories used to use young women because they were more adept at painting tiny numerals than men, and they had large numbers of young women using radium paint in order to make the numerals on the watch glow in the dark. And tragically, these women used to sharpen the point of their brushes by licking them.
Oh, right.
And it wasn't until years had gone by that we discovered the dangers of radioactivity. And today there are no watches with radium on them. It's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, this was the cutting edge of technology.
Right.
There was a dead end. That area of technology was a dead end. We had to back off it. And so when technology produces less long-term human happiness and success, it's no good. Right now, smart people are limiting the amount of screen time their children have access to.
You said it, smart people.
Yeah, right.
Right, because I see so many people
that there are a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of people handing their kids on strollers, handing them the iPad, and I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing?
It's lazy parenting, because
totally.
the child will be so distracted they won't talk to you. But smart parents talk to their children all the time as much as possible, because that's how kids develop linguistic fluency.
Mm-hmm. You know,
so
yes,
I think there are. And look, I realize the advantage. I mean, you know, in the real estate business, you used to have to get in your car with a big map and with a Rolodex and a list of all your clients. You know, every time you went to the car, you needed a suitcase. Today, that's all covered with a phone. You got your map, you got your contact list. It's fantastic, and it produces connectivity, and it did result in a massive increase in financial productivity and economic growth. It unquestionably did. It's not hard to spot the increases in GDP that hit around about 2000 with the arrival of the internet, and about 2010 as smartphones become more ubiquitous. So yeah, obviously there are good parts of it, but like fire, very, very powerful, very helpful, very dangerous. Nuclear energy, dangerous, but fantastic. Modern current technology, dangerous, but fantastic. It needs to become your tool. You mustn't become its tool.
And you need to learn how to use it properly. You know, one of the things that also comes to mind is you've helped so many people with their finances. You chose to help others. You did not just keep it to yourself. So you're in abundance of knowledge, but you don't retain it just for you, because you could have, right? As a rabbi,
but then I wouldn't have made as much money as I have made.
Right, because you're helping.
Yeah.
So do you recall, besides, Dave Ramsey wrote in your book, your foreword, he also said that it's one of the top 10 books that he keeps nearby and he reads. I have several books that people have sent me. For example, this gentleman here, Ed Rush, he has a book called not TED Talks, God Talks, right? And he shares on how he talks to God in order to help him with his finances and everything else. And he's teaching people on his God Talks. So when it comes to helping other people, you've had so many successes. Who in your mind, you don't have to name names, but who in your mind has truly taken your teachings and has excelled? Too many?
It's got to be hundreds of thousands of people. I say that because I know that not everybody who benefits from the work my wife and I do writes to tell me. So, but of the thousands who do and have written to tell me, I've got to assume that each one represents many, many people who've benefited and haven't written to tell me. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, it's hard to see how not to benefit right. because this is real. It works, and it changes people's financial destiny.
Yeah. I was talking to a gentleman just the other day, and he was on my show, and I mentioned that you were going to be on. He's like, oh my God. And this guy talks about wealth, and he helps people with wealth. He goes, I've not only used his book to do workshops, but I'm a deep believer in everything that he talks about. So there's one gentleman, his name is Chad, and he speaks highly of you, and he's also.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
Yeah, he also he works in Dave Ramsey's organization. So the fact that the minute he's like, oh, I love him, So the fact that you're helping so many people, and one of the things that you just mentioned is that you don't necessarily know how many, and I think that's a gift that you're giving, because it's not about, oh, I need to help these many people, because and when we talk about abundance, that's exactly what it's about. It's how many people can I help, not how many in a number of ways, but I want to help as many as will listen to the message, right?
Absolutely. One of the questions that I've asked for a long time is, who has helped more people? Elon Musk or Mother Teresa, the saint of Calcutta?
Yeah, it's we'd all like to say Mother Teresa, but that's not true. The truth. It's not the truth. I know that. Because
many, many, many more people are helped by companies that Elon Musk began than Mother Teresa ever attended to. Now, note, I'm not saying who does God think is a better human being. Right. I don't know the answer to that. It's nothing I talk about. But I only asked who has done more for more human beings. Mm-hmm. And the answer is obvious. It's very clear. Steve Jobs has done more for more human beings than Mother Teresa. Elon Musk has done more for more human beings than Mother Teresa. Bill Gates. I'm not saying these are saintly, wonderful guys. That's not the point.
Right.
Who has done more for more people? And that is a very, very important measure. And it has a lot to do with financial success.
Well, it comes to, what are your thoughts about combining success with leadership? Because you can have somebody who is a great leader by themselves and does not really see of helping others. They're only looking out for themselves, and they may be successful in a point, but not as successful as you just mentioned when they help more people.
I'm not sure. Could you just
Sure.
rephrase that question?
When we talk about leadership and success, what is it that makes a person more successful? Is it the fact that they're looking at it for themselves, or they're not worried about their own success, but they're worried about helping another person, being a giver more than a taker? Because we have both in this world. So
I think that, because the world is a complicated place, there unquestionably are people. You can put your finger on miserable, horrible human beings who've made a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But that is an outlier situation. In the overwhelming majority of people, whether it's in Europe, and I've lectured in many places in Europe, or whether it's in Africa or in Asia, where I've spoken in places, or in the United States of America, overwhelmingly, the majority of people who make a lot of money, not necessarily billions, but millions, right, are people you'd like to spend an evening with, people you'd like to talk to, people you'd like to have a beer with. Mm-hmm. And that's a really important thing. I cannot say that the majority of tennis players are people I'd like to spend some time with, because many of them are bratty and bad-tempered. Mm. I can't say that the majority of university professors are people I'd like to spend time with. Some of them are just indescribably stupid. Mm. So I wouldn't want to do that. And they're certainly not people dedicated to the welfare of others. But it is true that the majority of successful business professionals are people I find interesting and pleasant and enjoyable to spend time with. It is a huge difference. It's a way in which business and the business of making money is quite different, because nothing else focuses you on the needs and desires of other people. The tennis player wants to beat his opponent. That's all he's thinking of. And he knows that prize money will follow. Right. The professor is thinking about God knows what, because he's tenured and he can't be fired no matter what garbage he injects into the ears of his willing subjects. Mm-hmm. But the businessman is focused on keeping his employees happy, keeping his suppliers happy, keeping his customers happy. I don't know of any other activity where you are incentivized to care about the needs and desires of your fellow human beings.
So he's caring for more people. He's helping more
Absolutely.
people. Absolutely.
And as far as leadership is concerned, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about leadership. When you ask people to define what is a leader, there's a lot of waffling about that. And I know life's a complicated thing, but that is not a complicated question. A leader is really simple to define, in the same way that a mother is easy to define. A mother is somebody who has, is a female person who has children. That's what a mother is. What's a leader? A leader is somebody who has followers, period. That's not hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you're a leader. Pleased to meet you. What's up? Well, I'm looking for where your followers. If you're a leader, what are you talking about? You're a leader. What does that mean? Yeah. So, and also there are leaders in many different areas. And somebody who may be a leader, a very good leader in times of warfare, may not be seen as a great peacetime leader, and the other way around. People who are great leaders in business may not necessarily translate into great leaders of communities and of families and of churches. So leadership is not a general term. I don't know of anyone in history who's ever been a great leader in a number of different venues. I don't think that's possible.
Right. They specialize, right? So let me ask you, what is the most common misconception that people have about money and spirituality? And do you think it's actually hurting us, that misconception?
Well, it hurts anybody who possesses it. Anybody who has that misconception obviously is being injured by it. The misconception I think that is most important to address is, first of all, what spiritual means. People assume that when I use the word spiritual, I'm talking about God. Right. I'm not. God is God. Spiritual has nothing to do with God. There are aspects of spirituality that have to do with God, but not everything. Pardon me. It's like saying wheels have to do with transport. Well, that's true, but there are aspects of transport that don't use wheels, like ships or airplanes. All right, there's a wheel on a plane when it's landing, but it's not using wheels while it's moving. Right. So in the spiritual doesn't have to do with virtue or piety or religion or God. That's not what spiritual means. Spiritual is really simple to define. Spiritual is anything that cannot be measured in a laboratory, period. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. It's a belief, right?
No, it's not.
It's not a belief.
No.
So is it an idea?
No, not an idea. I'll
it a
tell you what it
concept?
is. This is physical because I can measure its color on a photospectrometer.
Right.
I can measure its weight. I can measure its height. I can measure its diameter. It's totally measurable. This is physical. How's about loyalty?
Spiritual. I get you.
Now, I like, if my friends have a mug so we can both have a mug of coffee together, that's great. Or I'll give you one of my mugs. That's fine also. But that's all measurable. How big a mug do you want? Do you want a 10-ounce mug or a 6-ounce mug? I got both. Loyalty, I also like loyalty in friends. Measurable? Not at all. Integrity, measurable? Of course not. If it were, if you could come up with the test for integrity, every human resources department of every company on the planet would buy your product. Right. There is no such thing.
So that's spiritual.
Persistence. If I knew that everybody I hired, I could measure for persistence, and I wouldn't hire people with low persistence ratings, I'd pay almost anything for that test because it would save me so much trouble. No such thing. Spiritual qualities cannot be measured because they are spiritual. And that's the point. Not everything in the world can be explained through physical measurement. Love, loyalty, hatred, these things cannot be quantified or measured or predicted. Absolutely not. And that's why it's so important to have an understanding of spirituality, to sort of go back to the holistic you, teacher Raphael. I speak about integrating not only your finance and your family and your friendships and your physical fitness, but also your faith. What about somebody who doesn't have any faith? Okay, fine. Then at least you need to know the nomenclature. You need to know that under the heading of faith exists the spiritual. And you cannot succeed financially if you don't understand the spiritual nature of money. Because money is not measurable. Well, what are you talking about, Lapin? I can count my money. I can look at my financial statement. Of course, money is measurable. That's true. Just the physical manifestations of it. I can measure how many discs of metal in my pocket. I can measure how many strips of colored paper in my wallet. I can even measure the ones and zeros on the hard drive of the computer in my bank. But let's talk about value, what money really represents, purchasing power and value. If your grandfather put $100 bills in a cigar box 70 years ago, and you find that cigar box now, is that going to be as exciting to you as that $1,000 would have been to your grandpa? No. Because the value of that $1,000 is today about a quarter of what it was when your grandpa put away those $100 bills. How do you measure that? How do you can't, because it involves spiritual factors.
So money and spirituality, hard to measure.
Well, to answer your question of the biggest misconceptions, A, that spirituality has to do with God and religion, and B, that money isn't spiritual but physical. Those are both not true.
Well, great explanation. Thank you so much for doing that. And
you
not
are
only
welcome,
did you
it's been wonderful being with you, I got to tell you.
Yeah, you clarified it not only for me, but it's the way you put it together. So thank you for that. And God bless you.
Great pleasure being with you, and I hope we'll do this again soon as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have other shows too. One is called Business Prowess. I think you would be great at it as well.
Well, I look forward to the opportunity, teacher Raphael.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what
Thank you
sifu
so
means,
much.
I learned.
Yes. Yes. And, one of the things before we go is, did I lose out because I was not brought up in a religious home?
Not
But
necessarily.
I am looking for my religion now, right?
Yeah. No, not necessarily at all, because there are many things that as a child you don't appreciate, you only get as an adult. So, no, I'd say many of the Jewish people in my community only understood religion and God when they were in their 20s and 30s.
Okay.
So no, I think in many ways it's actually an advantage.
Because you find your own, right?
Yeah, you approach it on an adult level. When
Mhm.
you're a child, God is this old man on a cloud somewhere controlling the world, and sometimes very hard to outgrow childish perceptions of spirituality.
Mm.
But as an
Beautiful.
adult, you develop a much more adult understanding when you speak to people who are learned and knowledgeable in this area, which is exactly what you do with calculus or cooking, right? If you want to learn how to cook or how to do calculus, you don't sit around thinking about it. You talk to a cooking teacher, or you get instruction from a mathematics teacher. And so it is. If you really care about getting to know God and getting to know religion, you need to find a good teacher.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you so much again for being here with me today, and I really
It's
appreciate
a
it.
great
Your
pleasure,
time.
and I thank you. Were very gracious about having me, and I'm happy for that. So God bless you. I want to wish you prosperity, and all your many members of the audience, all the people that follow you, all the people whom you are a leader, they should prosper and succeed as well. And I hope I am able to have helped a little bit today, and I hope to be able to help more through my books and online programs that make it easier for people to progress towards prosperity.
Oh, yes. And thou shalt prosper for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much for all you've done for all of us. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care. See you again next time. God bless.
God bless.